This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My wife is a firm believer in the DINK philosophy. She says we should enjoy the present and not dedicate our lives to children. But one day, I saw my wife, who was supposed to be away on a business trip, gently holding a little boy's hand. And that boy, he kept calling her mommy. At this moment, a thick manila envelope lay before me. In this package, I had hired a private investigator to find out, costing me over 100,000 yuan. The subject of the investigation was my wife, Haley. I had been staring at this envelope for half an hour. It was as if it wasn't a stack of documents, but a Pandora's box. I was afraid that once opened, the 2 years of happy married life Haley and I shared would vanish like a bubble. Lost in thought, a knock came at the study door. My wife's gentle voice came from outside. "Rocky, are you done with work? Come out for dinner when you're finished. I made your favorite tomato and oxtail soup today." A suffocating feeling seized my chest, and the heart that had been tormented for almost a month suddenly felt a pang of guilt. "It's fine. You go ahead and eat. Don't wait for me." Haley is my wife of 2 years, whom I dated for 2 years prior. She is gentle and considerate, adept at both entertaining guests and cooking, and handles herself with grace. In all our time together, we've hardly ever argued, and any occasional disputes were quickly resolved. It's rare that Haley is such a reasonable and logical woman. Being with her is very comfortable. Which of my friends doesn't envy me for finding such an understanding wife, who brings honor to her husband? In today's environment, with widespread fear of marriage and childbirth, and increasingly confrontational gender relations, finding a soulmate with compatible values is truly difficult. My friends even jokingly called us a rare celestial couple. But why? Out of the blue, did I suddenly begin to suspect my own partner? This all goes back to a fleeting glance I caught in the mall last month. Haley informed me that her company had arranged for her to train at a factory in the neighboring province, expected to be on a business trip for about half a month. She works as a training manager in a foreign company, often traveling to factories and other subordinate cities to conduct onboarding training for new employees. So I didn't pay much attention. A few days later, while having dinner with a subordinate at the mall, my subordinate reminded me, "Rocky, isn't that your wife? Call her over. Let's eat together." I looked up in the direction my subordinate was pointing. Through the restaurant glass, I saw Haley wearing a white floral dress, holding a small boy's hand, passing by outside with a smile on her face. I was stunned. Wasn't she on a business trip in the neighboring province? How could she be with a child? Could I have seen wrong? Before I could sort out the thoughts in my mind, I had already gotten up and chased after her. As soon as I got not far behind her, ready to call her name, I saw the boy tugging at her hand, pointing to the children's trampoline in the mall. "Mommy, I want to play on this." That little boy's mommy instantly terrified me, because my wife, she is an unwavering DINK. When we first got engaged, Haley repeatedly told me that she would not have children after marriage. I don't like children. I hate their noise. Current society also has low tolerance for children. Essentially, I am selfish. I hope the resources we strive for are for us to enjoy, not for a child. Once we become parents, we are symbolized in society. I can be a mother, a daughter, a wife. You can be a son, a father, a husband, but we are no longer ourselves. I live in this world. I don't want to be labeled and lose myself. This is my life. A healthy and strong body only lasts for a few decades. And for these few decades, I want to live for myself. Above. Those were her exact words. Of course, what she thought was pretty much what I thought. I am also a DINK. I don't like children either, and I believe in hedonism. In my early years, I even had a vasectomy, which led my parents to suspect I was gay. So, Haley and I getting married was a matter of shared values. A perfect match. But how could a little boy suddenly appear and call her mommy now? This little boy looked to be about 5 years old, and Haley and I had only been together for 4 years, including dating and marriage. Plus, I had a vasectomy a long time ago, and I get regular physical exams every year. This child, who kept calling her mommy, could not possibly be mine. It was this little boy's mommy that prevented me from calling out to Haley. I could only watch as she, with gentle eyes, picked up the whining little boy. She gently coaxed him towards the children's playground, disappearing into a large crowd of noisy parents with children. This was a place that we would usually frown upon and avoid when shopping. Moreover, when had I ever seen her so gentle and loving towards a child in front of me? If she met a friend with a child, at most she would politely compliment them, but no more emotion than that. But just now, the genuine affection and tenderness she showed towards the little boy were not something that could be faked. The way she held the child was so practiced, and her expression while coaxing the child was so gentle. It was clear she had done this many times before. I don't remember how I got back to the restaurant, how I brushed off my subordinate's doubts, or how I got home. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Between calling her to confront her and pretending nothing happened, I chose to stand pat and find someone to investigate first, because neither of us could be bothered to deal with the myriad of relatives from both sides. So, after we got married, we settled in the city where we work, away from both her hometown and my hometown. This was fair, just as she didn't know my family's relatives. I didn't know hers either. I only knew her hometown was in a provincial capital in the southwest, and I only went back with her once a year for Chinese New Year to visit relatives. I only knew her parents, and I never paid attention to any of the other miscellaneous relatives. When I hired the detective, I still held a 1 in 10,000 chance of hope. What if this boy was from one of her relatives' families? Taking a deep breath, I opened the file package. Almost immediately upon seeing the first page of the document, the hope that had lingered for over a month was shattered by a sledgehammer. It was a birth certificate. The boy's name was Hudson. He was 6 years old this year and about to start elementary school. The mother's column clearly stated Haley's name, and the ID number matched. Only the father's column was completely blank. The detective's investigation was very thorough. This child was currently registered under Haley's uncle's household, but the child had always been raised by Haley's parents. Haley's parents had always claimed to outsiders that this was their second son, born in response to the national policy of allowing a second child. They just said that because his zodiac sign clashed with his parents, they registered his Huku household registration with someone else's family. In those 2 years, news of only children growing up, getting married, and then their parents having younger siblings was rampant. So, people around them were not surprised. Good heavens, I went back to her hometown with her every year, and I never saw any trace of this child. Even her relatives never mentioned the child's existence. So, Haley united her entire family to deceive me? What angered me even more was that Haley had recently been contacting schools in our city. It seems she intends to bring the child to our current first-tier city to receive better educational resources. Coincidentally, since we don't have children, the house we bought is next to a prestigious experimental elementary and middle school affiliated with the Normal University, offering excellent school placement. The time I accidentally ran into her with the child in the mall a month ago was actually when she brought her son for a school interview here. But this house was bought by me before marriage. Is Haley planning to use my resources to support her premarital illegitimate child? Oh no, she's already supporting him. Damn it. After Haley and I got married, she gave her parents 10,000 yuan almost every month. She said it was for their support since she had started her own family. But Haley is just a training manager. Her salary is just over 10,000 yuan. If she gives all her salary to her parents, doesn't she spend my money on food, drink, travel, and entertainment? Not to mention, I also give her an extra 20,000 yuan in pocket money every month because I started my own translation company, and my income is quite substantial. I never questioned how she spent her money. Now, looking at the information provided by the private investigator, I finally know where her money went. It clearly showed that half a year after we got married, she had rented a small apartment long-term in a building near our residential complex. During every winter and summer vacation, Haley's parents would bring the child to stay there, and Haley would use the excuse of a business trip to reunite with her son there. For almost 2 years, I had been completely unaware of this. I must be the biggest idiot in the world. My temples throbbed, and I abruptly closed the documents, taking several deep breaths. Before I could barely calm myself down, Haley was waiting for me at the dining table as usual. When she saw me come out, she smiled. Did you encounter something difficult at work? You haven't finished dealing with it for so long. The soup has gotten cold. I'll go warm it up again. She was as virtuous as ever, but I saw the hypocrisy behind her gentle demeanor. Why didn't you eat first? Didn't I say you didn't have to wait for me? Haley gently shook her head. It's just the two of us. If I ate first, you wouldn't have the heart to eat alone. Hearing this, an indescribable feeling surged in my heart. My routine was irregular. My cooking skills were poor, and I always just haphazardly got through meals. Before I was with Haley, I had severe stomach problems and slight anorexia. At that time, I had just met Haley, and the foreign company she worked for happened to have a project collaboration with my translation company. The parent company was conducting a human resources project consultation at the time, requiring all documents, training materials, and audio-video from meetings involved in the project to be translated into Chinese for the company in China. Haley, as the training manager, was assigned to liaise with my company on the project. My company had only been established for 2 years then, and I, as the boss, personally undertook much of the translation work and gradually became familiar with Haley. One time, while working overtime at the company for proofreading, I suddenly had a stomach spasm. It was Haley who took me to the hospital, and after learning from the doctor that it was caused by my long-term, irregular diet, the next day, she brought me a carefully prepared meal. I felt embarrassed and declined, but Haley smiled gently, a dimple appearing at the corner of her mouth. Eating alone is lonely and lacks a sense of ritual, but eating with 2 people is different. I want to find a meal buddy. President Rocky, if you don't mind, let's eat together from now on. I have to say, it's hard for any man to refuse a woman who cooks well and has a gentle temper. Even though Haley's appearance was not that of a great beauty, but the dimple at the corner of her mouth and the faint blush on her face that day struck my heart. From then on, I developed feelings for her. Soon after that translation project ended, I confessed my feelings to Haley, and we began our relationship. After being with her, she monitored my routine, took me exercising, made medicinal meals for me, and slowly helped me regulate my stomach stomach issues. It can be said that Haley's care for me was meticulous. Her gentleness and thoughtfulness were like a large net, firmly enveloping me. Sometimes, I even felt that I couldn't live without her in this life. If I hadn't accidentally discovered she had an illegitimate child, I probably would have been completely under her thumb for the rest of my life. Thinking this, a chill ran down my spine. Haley didn't notice my thoughts. As usual, she refilled my rice and served me soup, while casually chatting with me about work. When she mentioned her colleague wanted to buy another house with school access for her second daughter to attend junior high, Haley suddenly paused. Husband, speaking of school access, I have something I want to discuss with you. I thought to myself, here it comes, the main event. Actually, from the moment I learned Haley was looking for an elementary school for her illegitimate child, I guessed what she wanted to do. My house has school access, but to use it, the child's household registration must be moved here. Haley's household registration was with her parents in her hometown. Only I had applied for a local household registration to get subsidies for my business. Therefore, it was highly probable she would propose to me to transfer the illegitimate child's household registration under my name and register him at the house we live in. It's like this. My parents had a younger brother for me a few years ago. I wanted to see how she would spin this for me, so I feigned a shocked expression. What? When did this happen? How did I not know? Haley showed a perfectly timed wry smile. It's a long story, and I'm also to blame for hiding it. A few years ago, didn't they open up the second child policy? My parents had a younger brother for me without a word, and I, working away, knew nothing about it. By the time I found out, the child had already been born. This was all before I met you. I didn't mention it to you. Firstly, because the child's zodiac sign, Chinese zodiac, and birth chart clashed with my parents, and my superstitious grandmother decided to have him adopted by my uncle. Nominally, he's actually my uncle's son. Secondly, I thought it was too shameful, which is why I never brought it up to you. At this point, she softened her tone, looking at me apologetically. Rocky, I truly didn't mean to hide it from you. I love you too much, and I was afraid you'd look down on my family, so I didn't tell you about this. In fact, why I'm a dink is also related to this matter. My parents were really crazy. They insisted on having a child when they were over 50. That kind of situation was too frightening, which is why I'm particularly resistant to having children. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Haley's acting. It's a pity she's not an actress. With these words, she first cleared her own involvement and put all the blame on her parents. If I hadn't investigated the truth beforehand, I probably would have been truly fooled by her. I actually don't like this younger brother of mine at all, but my parents did raise me after all, and they came to me for help, so I couldn't refuse. Rocky, do you think, can this child temporarily be moved into your household registration? He'll be moved out once he finishes elementary school? Are you saying your younger brother is going to occupy the school access of my house? It's not occupying, it's borrowing. She gently tried to persuade me. Are we DINKs? My parents are actually very opposed to me being a dink, and now they're threatening me with having children, saying if I don't have children, they'll send my younger brother here to study. I know you definitely don't want children, so we just have to compromise and help your parents raise their son. Perhaps my words were unpleasant. Haley's face turned a little ugly. No, it's just moving his household registration here to give him a spot for school. My parents will come to take care of his food and lodging. There's no intention of having you support him. I dropped my chopsticks and stood up. Not supporting your younger brother? Today I finally understand why your salary goes to your parents' home every month. In the past I didn't understand why you gave your parents money every month. Now that I think about it, it was for your younger brother, wasn't it? You say you're not supporting him. Do you even believe that yourself? Haley probably hadn't expected me to react so strongly, or perhaps she thought I would be at her mercy. As soon as I showed my refusal, she clearly became angry. Rocky, we agreed at the beginning that we were DNKs, and neither of us would interfere in the other's family affairs. What's wrong with me using my salary for my parents? Such double standards. Huh? Yes. Neither of us interferes in the other's family affairs. So what are you doing now? Why should I help your parents raise their child? I stared at Haley and changed the subject. Or rather, this child isn't your parents at all? Haley's face instantly went pale, then turned crimson. In 4 years together, it was the first time I'd seen her get so angry. Rocky, what do you mean? Are you questioning my integrity? She even raised her hand, intending to slap my face. Rocky, don't be ungrateful. Compared to your friends' wives who throw tantrums and run back to their parents' homes at every turn, I'm decent and have given you enough face, haven't I? You won't even help with such a small favor. Are you still my husband? Or did I just get married for nothing and simply found a roommate? Playing the moral high ground? I wouldn't fall for that. So, I said with a grim face, if you don't want me as your husband, you can certainly find someone else. I won't stop you. Haley trembled with rage. You bastard. Do you think I can't live without you? Rocky, I'm telling you, if you don't agree to this, then we're done. With that, she grabbed her bag from the sofa and stormed out, slamming the door. The air instantly became quiet. I looked at the cold food on the table and smiled involuntarily. This matter was actually a bit strange. Logically, this child named Hudson was adopted under Haley's uncle's name, and during our marriage and visits, they kept him hidden from me, never letting letting me see him. Presumably, my parents-in-law didn't want this child to appear before my eyes. But why? Is Haley now revealing the child's existence to me? I don't think. Bringing the child to study in the city where we live would be the old couple's idea. Between Haley and her parents regarding the child's placement, there might be a significant conflict. I went back to the study and reread the documents. When I saw the apartment address, I had an idea. As for the marriage, it had to end. I am a dink. I wouldn't even bother raising my own child. Haley wanted to foist her illegitimate child on me. She was dreaming too big. With her calculating against me like this, just getting a divorce would be too cheap for her. She had to pay the price. The next day, I wanted that apartment following the address. The apartment building was for both commercial and residential use, with a mixed bag of people coming and going. Diagonally opposite the apartment Haley rented was a short-term rental guest house. I spent a few thousand yuan to rent it for a month. And that very day, I installed a camera at the entrance, then went home. At 6 in the afternoon, Haley, who had left home last night, had not returned. So I opened the app on my phone and connected to the guest house camera. It wasn't a few minutes before Haley appeared in the hallway. However, she wasn't alone. Beside her was a long-haired man. Their fingers were intertwined, their posture intimate. They would kiss every 2 steps, as if they couldn't walk without kissing. Damn it, I just felt my forehead glow green with fury. Where did this long-haired man come from? To avoid unnecessary complications, I immediately took a video clip and sent it to the private investigator I had contacted before. This private investigator was also efficient in his work. Within a few days of transferring the money, the information about the long-haired man was delivered to me. Only then did I realize what DINK philosophy, what kindness and gentleness like water. It was all faked by Haley. Damn it, she wasn't a dink at all, and her dating and marrying me was also her meticulously planned scheme. It turned out Haley had a lover since her youth. That is, this long-haired man, named Tony, was a frustrated painter. Haley loved this Tony uncontrollably. Not only did she live with him right after starting university, cooking for him, but she also got pregnant and had several abortions for him. But this Tony had no real ability, only proudly clung to the so-called artistic integrity, and was unwilling to humble himself to find a job easily. Haley's parents naturally strongly opposed their daughter being with Tony. However, Haley was like someone possessed. No matter how much her parents objected, she insisted on being in a relationship with Tony, and even said she would only marry him in this life. Unfortunately, Tony was not worthy of Haley's deep affection. After graduating from university, Tony lived off Haley for 3 years. Then he conned Haley into borrowing from all major banks and online lending companies, raising 700,000 to 800,000 yuan, all of which he absconded with, disappearing without a trace. At that time, Haley had just found out she was pregnant. A normal person at this moment should have an abortion and choose to call the police, right? But Haley, this crazy woman, refused. She insisted on giving birth to this child. The divorce certificate was smoothly obtained, and less than 2 days later, I heard that Haley had impatiently married Tony. The H family parents were probably truly disheartened by this love-struck fool. They no longer cared about Hudson. Haley's parents simply said they were cutting ties with Haley, then came to my house to apologize one last time before returning to their hometown. Only then did my friend find out that Haley actually had an illegitimate child before marrying me. He spoke up for me. Leaving with nothing was too easy on her. Most of the money she spent from you these past years probably went to that illegitimate child. Using your money to raise someone else's kid, you must demand compensation for emotional damages. I smiled. Divorce was just the first step. Of course, I wouldn't let Haley off so easily. Fortunately, the old couple from the H family still had some conscience, and with their help, my divorce went quite smoothly. If it had dragged on, and Haley had realized Tony owed money outside, given her love-struck nature, she definitely wouldn't have divorced me so easily, and would surely have tried to get money from me. Now Haley and I had no connection whatsoever, and she was again so infatuated by Tony that she had plunged headfirst into a pit of fire. How could I not add fuel to the fire, and do justice to the immense cuckolding I had suffered these past years? Tony's attempt to gain something backfired. He didn't manage to swindle much money from the rich woman, but instead was pressured by her husband into writing an IOU, adding another massive debt to his existing ones. Therefore, after marrying Haley, he was still restless, looking for another woman to swindle money from. I asked the private investigator to introduce me to a socialite, the kind who had AIDS. I gave her a sum of money and asked her to be Tony's prey. This woman was practically Tony's colleague, having swindled many rich second-generation playboys herself. Tony's tricks were simply not good enough against her. She easily turned the tables and swindled him in minutes. After they slept together 4 or 5 times, the woman simply packed her bags and left, disappearing without a trace. 6 months later, Haley was diagnosed with HIV positive during her company's annual routine physical examination. Then, she was fired by the company under some pretext. Haley's former colleague told me about this. When we first got married, I had added a few of her close colleagues on WeChat. The real reason for the divorce was not disclosed externally. Now that Haley was found to have HIV, this former colleague immediately smelled a rat and came to me to inquire about the divorce gossip. I didn't hide the fact that I had been cuckolded. This former colleague was quite sympathetic. If you ask me, President Rocky should still go to the hospital for a checkup. Sigh. I never thought that the seemingly gentle Haley would be so promiscuous and private. I smiled. Haley and Tony's marriage registration was originally low-key. Many of her friends didn't even know she was divorced, but this former colleague was quite gossipy, and thanks to her spreading the word everywhere, Haley's reputation among her friends was utterly ruined. She was fired and suddenly lost her income. Tony was always a freeloader, never doing anything proper. Their lives naturally fell into dire straits. Haley and I had many mutual friends, so I often heard news of her borrowing money from one of our friends again. Close friends naturally knew the reason for our divorce, and mostly weren't willing to bother with her anymore. There were also some unsuspecting friends who actually lent her money, and when she didn't repay it, they came to me for information, which I naturally told them truthfully. These friends, while sympathizing with me, were also very angry. Initially, they might have been hesitant to demand repayment due to their friendship, but now they all set aside their feelings and asked Haley for their money back. It was said that Haley was overwhelmed. Her life was not easy, with a history of HIV. No company that did proper background checks would hire her. She now had to support not only Tony, but also Hudson, and it was at this very moment that Tony's creditors came knocking again. Only then did Haley realize that Tony had been addicted to gambling years ago and had borrowed a lot of money, even mortgaging his parents' retirement home to pay off debts. But it was still a drop in the bucket. The $700,000 to $800,000 he had previously taken from her was for his escape, but after hiding in Southeast Asia for a few years, he was chased back by his creditors. When she still had a job, Tony could get money from her to appease the creditors. When she had no income, the creditors would come knocking at her door in minutes. Tony was truly not a man. Facing the creditors at the door, he actually pointed at Haley and said, "This is my wife. She manages all the money in the house. You should ask her for money." Then he slipped away, leaving his wife and child to be interrogated and harassed by the creditors. Why did I know all this so clearly? Because Haley came to find me. She came to me to borrow money. In my office, she cried very sadly. It hadn't even been a year since our divorce, yet she looked like she had aged more than 10 years. Her once smooth and shiny long hair was cut short, looking frizzy because it hadn't been properly cared for, and I could even see several prominent gray hairs mixed in. Her clothes were also indescribable, dull gray, in a men's style. When she was with me before, her attire, while not luxurious, was at least branded. Haley's looks weren't stunning, but she always managed to dress herself very elegantly. But now, I'd believe it if you said she was a garbage collector. With snot and tears, she accused Tony. I was truly blind to marry such a useless man. Only now do I know he owes nearly 10 million yuan. His parents' house isn't even enough to cover it. I also have to raise a child. The whole family depends on me for living. Now I've lost my job, and I have to pay back money. It's really going to kill me. I'm at my wit's end. I'm truly at my wit's end. Otherwise, I wouldn't have thrown away all my pride and come to you again. My dad and mom have blacklisted me, and I can't borrow from friends anymore. I really have no choice. Rocky, please, help me one last time. I'll do anything. Lend me 2 million yuan. Hearing that number, I snorted lightly. I know I'm asking for too much, but if I don't get this money, I'll be driven to a dead end. What does you being driven to a dead end have to do with me? I interrupted her. Your parents, your husband don't care about you, and you come to me. Isn't that ridiculous? Haley's face flushed. You, if you're not going to lend me money, then why did you ask about my situation? I laughed. You have a lot of nerve. Do you think I'm still hung up on you? Is there a possibility that I'm just enjoying watching you make a fool of yourself right now? Perhaps it was losing face in front of me. She became enraged. If you won't lend it, then don't. Does having money make you great? When I divorced, I didn't ask for a single penny from you. You were supposed to give me alimony. I sneered. You're 32 years old this year. You have to walk the path you chose even if you have to crawl. Your parents aren't bailing you out anymore, and you want to act like a giant baby in front of your ex-husband. Do you think you're a fairy? Come on. The reason I'm willing to listen to your rambling is because your current pathetic state gives me satisfaction. After all, you put me through a lot of embarrassment by cuckolding me. Back then you got a lot of money from me when we were together, spending it on your illegitimate child and Tony. I was too lazy to bother with you, which is why I never pursued it. If you keep pushing your luck with me, I don't mind becoming your creditor. Anyway, you already owe enough money. One more debt from me wouldn't hurt, would it? Haley's lips trembled, but she didn't continue to be arrogant and scurried away dejectedly. After this, I occasionally heard about Haley's current situation from friends. It was said that the women Tony had previously swindled had banded together and reported him to the police. And Tony was taken into custody by the police. Once he was imprisoned, his debts were completely transferred to Haley. Haley was harassed by debt collectors to the point where she couldn't live in peace and wanted to divorce Tony. But Tony had married her with the intention of shifting his debts onto her, and he stubbornly refused to divorce. Haley had no choice but to sue Tony in court, but the other party was uncooperative with the divorce and was also in police custody. So the process of divorce through litigation was lengthy. She could only work odd jobs to pay off debts, while also fighting a divorce lawsuit with Tony. But the divorce never materialized. It dragged on until Tony was released from prison, and the two were still arguing. They had minor quarrels every 3 days and major fights every 5 days. Haley would curse Tony as a bloodsucker, and Tony would curse her as a cheap slut who paid for him. Their arguments often escalated into physical fights, and the police intervened several times, including my friend who was a police officer. He later told me that Haley was severely beaten and had gone to the hospital multiple times. I think, if these two keep fighting like this, something will happen sooner or later. Indeed, my friend's words proved prophetic. Not long after, Haley stabbed Tony to death, and this incident made local news. It turned out that Haley had been working several odd jobs to support Tony and Hudson, and also paying off debts, living a very tight life. After Tony was released from prison, he was again pursued by creditors. He didn't want to go out and earn money, so he thought of crooked ways. Looking at Hudson, who was less than 10 years old, he had an idea. He contacted a human trafficker and arranged to sell Hudson for tens of thousands of yuan. Haley was busy working and hadn't even noticed her son was missing. It was only after 2 or 3 days of no sign of him that she realized her son was gone. She frantically searched everywhere, but Tony was just making sarcastic remarks on the side. Only then did Haley realize that Tony had been so deranged as to sell his own son. In extreme despair and rage, she grabbed a knife and stabbed Tony to death, then called the police and surrendered. Haley confessed to the crime, but begged the police to help find the child. Fortunately, Hudson was older after all, and knew to seek help, so he was quickly found. Ultimately, Haley's parents were contacted and took the child back. Haley was eventually sentenced to a suspended death sentence, and in the 3rd year of her imprisonment, Haley's immune system collapsed, and she fell seriously ill. Being released for medical treatment, Haley's father even came to see me. Haley's father's hair had turned completely white, and he was very hunched over. A troublesome daughter had indeed put him through a lot. He said that Haley, at the very end of her struggles, finally regretted being with Tony and often reminisced about how happy she would have been if she hadn't been so foolish and had just lived her life honestly with me. He said that Haley was on her last legs and wanted to see me once to personally apologize. I smiled and refused Haley's father. Haley's belated repentance meant nothing to me. After all, I had already exacted my justice. The end. If you like Kitten's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.